Have you ever wondered what it would be like to experience the result of a steamy night between the Elder Scrolls Oblivion and Shadow Warrior, whilst Thief the Dark Project stares on from a nearby closet? If so, then... why? But either way, let me tell you my friends, what I have for you today could be exactly that. A true hidden gem and a crazy experience that truly has to be seen to be believed.
Stop right there, or it gets...
Releasing in 2006 from developers Arcane Studios, and featuring an absurd combination of gameplay mechanics and bonkers moments, reminiscent of a few other game franchises. Some of which I've mentioned, but keep your eye out to see if you can spot a handful of others, and let me know what you spot in the comments, as today we take a look at this criminally underrated world of Dark Messiah, of might and magic. When first diving into the game, we are greeted with an intimidating figure, with an expression similar to mine after the rigmarole of finally getting the game up and running on Windows 11. Beginning our adventure, we are thrown into the game's tutorial, as our young protagonist named Sereth, working his way through some trials led by our master, and being introduced to the game's magic, movement, and booting mechanics, with early on Dark Messiah showing its cards with being far more than your typical RPG hack-and-slash endeavour, whilst walking us through the basics of combat, utilising the environment and kicking our foes around the floor like an unwanted pile of dirty laundry. Finishing up the tutorial, we meet with our tutor wizard Fenring. We won't be spoiling the main plotline for anyone who's still yet to play through the game, but the prologue sees our adventurer being sent out to retrieve the Skull of Shadows. But we will not be going alone, it seems.
However, my dear boy, I am not sending you alone. You'll need a guide, a companion.
Oh god, they're gonna be annoying.
What is your bidding, my master?
One can travel lighter than two, Sereth.
You know what, for once I agree. With our mission confirmed, we rejoin our adventurer making their way up to the city of Stonehelm, in an opening that with its ambience and emotive soundtrack feels incredibly well put together, reminding me of the beginning of Skyrim, that at the time wouldn't be released for another 5 years.
Where it's safe.
The farther we get, the better.
It's our home.
It'll be our too if they don't drive faster. There's an army of necromancers coming.
Necromancers? Fenric didn't say anything about them.
Master Fenric rarely tells everything he knows. Hurry, we'll be safer inside.
And the similarities do not stop there. After only a short time at the city gates, we are under attack, with a demonic horde attempting to siege the city, retreating back into the settlement in an already epic-feeling introduction. Climbing and leaping our way to one of the city's ballistas, we strike down the Cyclops leading the demonic charge, and with it, securing the city for now. And after failing to control myself with a curious guard, and failing to encourage a celebratory keg party, and possibly ending the life of one of the local guard's pets...
Outside the walls.
Oh, shit. Sorry about that. We are introduced to one of the game's main characters, Liana, while Sereth here gets a little bit hot under the collar.
I want to wash up before dinner. Please, follow me.
With pleasure.
Ah! He's being flirtatious! Don't you know what trouble that could cause in this day and age?
I mean, yes. Excellent.
Good recovery?
Guard!
And we are fucked. As with our recent look into the Bard's Tale, the 2000 script writing is in full effect with Dark Messiah, with both the game's inhabitants as well as our now internal companion cracking all sorts of quips, which for the most part adds to the game's humour, as well as the odd more disturbing comment, such as this one around our hero's father.
You know my father?
Oh yes, I've known him.
Ew. With the meeting of Liana, the real journey begins, tasking our player with battling through 10 chapters on their quest for victory. And although so far Dark Messiah may look like any other first-person RPG of the time, but it's here where the game truly shows its cards and just how over-the-top and frequently hilariously chaotic its combat encounters can be. Booting enemies off of rooftops, using the game's magic to take down entire groups like a scene from the Three Stooges. Not to mention the epic slow-mo executions, leading to carving through enemies, feeling like some sort of bonkers medieval fantasy action movie. And as far as first-person melee combat goes, that all too often feels incredibly lacking in impact. Dark Messiah, for me at least, feels like one of the best takes on it I've ever played, especially for an older title, with foes parrying and ducking under shots, clinching together during fights, and even the physics when landing a massive swing, smashing enemies into the wall with its force, and frequently flinging foes all over the place via the use of the Source engine. With even missing entirely and hitting the wall, feeling far more authentic than a lot of other first-person melee combat titles. and later down the line with tougher foes, granting some epic and quite challenging fights. Each level is littered with traps, pits, and other objects to turn the game's combat encounters into a game in itself, looking for the most effective and frequently highly destructive way of dispatching your foes, like a medieval John Wick working together with a tag team Kevin McAllister. However, also, as you can imagine, leading to a whole host of hilarious situations, such as fire mages setting themselves on fire, enemies owning each other, as well as our overly enthusiastic friend from the intro.
Right there, or it gets...
Or it gets what, mate? Or it gets face planted into barrel? Oh, I think I'll manage.
Oh, but Mitch, you have forgotten to mention the annoying call to action, asking viewers to like the video if they enjoy it, write a comment with their thoughts, and to subscribe to help the channel.
Back, foul temptress!
What?
Nothing there? Working through the levels, Dark Messiah's choice to go with a linear narrative-driven experience over one including a whole host of side quest content is enhanced by its set pieces and more action-packed situations, leaping across the rooftops chasing after our target in the dead of night during a thunderstorm, or taking on some of the game's huge boss encounters, allowing for an experience that is far more cinematic and epic feeling than found in more questing-focused RPGs. And the whole game, with its high fun factor and focus on moment-to-moment gameplay, didn't feel a step down at all, since it was far too easy to forget about missing out on gathering herbs for one of the villagers when busy doing things like making an NPC tree, or instead setting that villager ablaze and launching it at my enemy for an epic finisher. Is there something wrong with me? Without spoiling anything, the plotline, while not exactly being anything too far from what players are accustomed to, does include some multiple choices along the adventure, which will impact some minor elements and lead to obtaining one of 4 endings, something to encourage multiple playthroughs, and does well enough to feel like a suitable storyline to go along with its over-the-top gameplay, with additionally the player's internal companion chiming in now and again to comment on the situation.
You saved us all. You saved me.
I feel nauseous. Wake me when it's over.
And the story is delivered well with some great character animations and voice work to go along with it.
No. No!
He's alright, don't worry. Not gonna lie, I found that more funny. Okay, there's definitely something wrong with me. Dark Messiah also features a great soundtrack throughout, adding to each environment and further enhancing the game's cinematic feeling. Progression in the game is centered around obtaining skill points to spend on combat, magic, or utility, with some having multiple levels to unlock, granting further buffs and attack types. Stealth can be leveled to allow for sneaky instant kill strikes, and making sure to keep an eye out what you're standing on, as to reduce the sound of your footsteps, along with lock and pocket picking to round out the sneaky bastard spec. Magic has a number of spells available for offense and defense, such as the ability to charm enemies and force them to fight for you, flame, ice, and lightning offensive spells to carve a path through your enemies, with that epic slow-mo effect being a critical strike mechanic that once built up can be used with some magical abilities also, for an extra powerful effect of a massive inferno, or picking up live targets with telekinesis and launching them into orbit. Gear, of course, is also available to raise stats, with armors and rings obtainable that buff stealth and bow abilities, mana for spells, as well as defense for melee options, to go along with a decent amount of weaponry available during the game's runtime. Whilst again not as nuanced as many alternative RPG experiences, does allow to spec into a particular class, being a heavy magic user donning robes and a staff blasting foes into oblivion, or going for a more up-close and personal build with a sword and board cutting a path through enemies, with all feeling entertaining and satisfying. An interesting addition to the player's arsenal that works well with the physics puzzles throughout the game is a rope bow that works exactly as it sounds, firing an arrow to drop down a rope to climb up and traverse the terrain to progress, as well as used now and again to access a number of the game's hidden areas spread across its levels, rewarding those that use all the tools at their disposal to fully explore the game's world. Of course, a standout RPG experience cannot be complete without a range of enemies to take on, and Dark Messiah features just enough to keep things interesting during its runtime, whilst also oddly keeping things very authentic feeling. I temporarily adopted a bit of arachnophobia during my playthrough, with the legions of spiders in the game, that with just one bite can take the player's health all the way down to single digits, if they are caught without an antidote potion, giving way to some hair-raising encounters. Oh, f***ing Jesus. The undead in the game are oddly realistic, with many of them face-planting off of edges, mindlessly wandering in an attempt to engage the player, and fighting vertically challenged goblins leading to frequent missed strikes, giving me flashbacks of playing slappers only against that bastard friend picking Oddjob in GoldenEye. Some enemies have stronger variations that the player will meet as the game progresses, but as a whole, the real challenge as well as a lot of the fun comes from wandering into a tomb or courtyard, taking in the task at hand, and trying to figure out what can be used both in the game's environment, as well as with the provided toolset, to overcome the odds and come out on top. With of course the game's NPCs, as with most elements of this RPG, just adding to the hilarious moments, falling over themselves, and spouting some well-timed dialogue.
Don't try to run.
Don't worry mate, I can see you've got that covered. Overall, Dark Messiah Might and Magic completely blindsided me with how it's put together. The developers were clearly not overly concerned with crafting a gritty or serious RPG adventure, but rather wanted to create an experience that was just one hell of a fun time. The frankly absurd situations the combat can create, with entire groups of mobs face planting and setting themselves on fire, all of the Home Alone-esque traps and environmental elements, making each encounter feel like anything could happen, made this quite short game's runtime absolutely fly by with how enjoyable it is. There are enough RPG mainstays to keep fans of the genre happy, with nice touches such as being able to light your arrows on fire using a torch, and the game's books, which along with delivering plot, give advice on which enemies are weak to which elements. There's even a blacksmithing minigame to smelt collected metals into new weaponry, but the real heart and soul of this game is in its very action-orientated feeling, moment-to-moment gameplay, and the insanity that can be born from it. Being more linear, the level's environments shift frequently into new locations and providing new obstacles to overcome, with some, for a game being so old, actually being very visually impressive. As with so many other mid-2000 RPGs, the humour, both intentional and not, is consistent throughout. You are released, Orc. Stop talking and go and tell your brethren to stop kicking me down the stairs. Go! Go! Oh, maybe not. Taking inspiration from some greats that came before it, putting the Source engine to great use, and clearly inspiring some games that would come later, Dark Messiah should be on the list for anyone looking for some pure, unadulterated fun in between more serious outings. As for me, this game has done more than enough to earn its spot as yet another superbly crafted mid-2000s RPG classic. Thank you so much for watching. Have you played Dark Messiah or any other standout RPGs you could recommend? Either way, I'm keen to get your thoughts down in the comments. And please consider dropping the video a like if you enjoyed it, as that truly helps me out. I want to give a massive shout out to the channel members who help in supporting the channel. If you're interested in joining as a channel member for all sorts of perks, including exclusive videos like this one, the info is down in the description. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Jesus, calm down! Oh dear Lord, what have I done?